welcome or welcome back to another episode of the One of Us podcast. We're excited that you're here today because today is the start of a brand new series called our Counterculture series. So we're going to be discussing different elements of biblical teachings and how they influence our lives as believers to really live counterculturally. And we're starting today with the Good Samaritan story. So rapid fire, where's the Good Samaritan story in the Bible?
Luke 10:25. Boom.
There you go. Juan, why don't you give us a quick summary of Luke 10? And for those of you who are listening, I recommend really going back and looking at the whole section and really reading it thoroughly because it's a great one. But Juan, give us a quick synopsis.
Okay, quick synopsis. So basically, Jesus is kind of teaching in a crowd, and then someone kind of goes up and challenges Jesus, kind of asks him, what does it mean to love your neighbor? Right? So a lot of us who are Christian understand that God kind of commands us to love our neighbors as ourselves. So Jesus kind of paints this picture of three different people. You know, one person who's kind of like a priest, someone who's kind of like well regarded in society, and then someone who's kind of like, I guess, an outcast or marginalized person. All these three individuals kind of come across someone who's deeply in need. And the first two, the someone who's, I guess, recognized through the church and someone who has high standard, kind of ignore the individual, while the marginalized outcast person goes above and beyond to really serve and support that person in need. So I guess in this countercultural series, I think the first episode we're kind of just going over the Good Samaritan, and we kind of just want to tackle kind of how in today's society it says one way while God says another. So before we get there, what do you guys think the culture says when it comes to helping people and helping those in need?
I think people overall are very, self-centered. We hear things like you do you, or pick yourself up from the bootstrap, or just sayings like that, where it's like, take care of yourself, take care of your own. I got to put me first, like self-love sort of thing. I think this is countercultural in the way of no, serve. It's better to give all that you have, and it's better to serve with your time, resources, and energy than it is to just take care of yourself and be successfully regarded in society.
I feel like people in society tend to be a little bit more selective with who they help. I think that's also a thing. Like, they definitely judge individuals and just determine who does and doesn't deserve the extra help.
I may be jumping to another part of the Bible. Well, I literally am. But what I really like about this parable and this teaching of just serving others and just being a good servant of the Lord and being the hands and feet of Jesus also correlates to one of the passages in Matthew 5 that talks about loving your enemies. And so to Tati's point, oftentimes it's very selective on who we help or who we love. We see this even in Christian culture, I would say. It's very much there's certain types of people or certain ways that we give or we help or we serve, but really expanding our mindset to be no, Jesus amplified this, blew this idea of servitude and service out of the water to encompass each and every person without the ability to cast judgments of what they're doing with the help that we're giving them, or how they're, what they're going to do after we help them, yada yada.
Why do you think it's so hard for Christians today to help homeless populations? Let's just say as one population, right? I think the US, I don't know, Bureau of Statistics says that about 700,000 people in 2024 kind of reported being homeless or in need. Why do you think that number is so high, and where do you think the church is lacking in kind of meeting that need?
I think a lot of it has to do with assumptions. I think a lot of people just assume that homeless people are druggies and have put themselves in those situations. I feel like education on that part could be something that's really helpful. But also, I do think a lot of people are nervous about their safety too, because there are some homeless, I'm not saying all homeless, that they could be on drugs and might start attacking you or something. Maybe we can have more resources for those in both sides. I like what Grace Church did, where they would have the homes and kind of help them slowly get their life together. I think that could be a really amazing opportunity for people to get kind of their feet back in order.
I would say, Tati, a lot of it is fear-based. my family kind of went far in one direction in this area, but I remember even growing up, we'd have different homeless families or super low income families like living with us just to like for a period of time for people to get back on their feet. And obviously, like you have to have discernment in all areas in life, but I thought that was a really special way that my parents emulating just loving those who don't have the ability to really provide for their basic needs. And I liked what you were saying, Tati, because sometimes people think 100% people need money. Like we see that in the Bible, the giving and providing of money and resources, even in like the first century church, people would pull money together, everyone in the community, to like help different people in need. On top of that, there's other ways you can help, providing a place for someone to shower, being like just holding someone's hand and being like, hey, I know of this organization that you can get this help, let me take you there. Or getting a group of 4 or 5 people to do what you were saying, Tati, that Grace did, of just providing food, making sandwiches, talking to people, praying over people, really doing the work. Because sometimes people use money as just a, okay, I did it, and 100% needed to do anything in life, but also like the relationships you build, I think, are so significant. Because oftentimes we otherize people like, oh, those homeless people, oh, those poor people, but really bridging the gap and being like, no, we're all in the same boat. A lot of us are one step away from being in the same spot, one bad decision away from being in the same spot, one not getting one paycheck away from being in the same spot. So really having empathy and understanding for that.
I think something that is overlooked a lot too is a lot of people think, oh, like if I'm here giving them food, like it's good enough. But I think having conversations with them helps so much because I think it's one of those just like, okay, I did my justice, you know? I remember a couple weeks ago, I'm not trying to like, brag, but I was driving and I saw this really young kid at the exit of a freeway. And I came back and I brought him fruit and I had a whole conversation. I'm like, hey, like, you're young, like what happened? And I felt really bad. He said that his parents like passed away, and sometimes like we assume it's things that it's not. I think the assumption is really dangerous when it comes to this. Yeah, I felt really bad. He's like, yeah, like my parents passed away and I flunked out of college. And that was just so heartbreaking, and I was just like, I wish I could do more. I gave him as much advice, told him I'd be praying, but I think just having the conversation too.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. I like what you guys are talking about in terms of like fear and assumption, because I think that obviously those are just barriers of talking to somebody. But I like what you're saying, Tati, that sometimes people think that meeting a basic need in the beginning or whatever is just enough, but it's like going above and beyond, right? And that's what we see in that parable. It's like not only did the Good Samaritan like help him along the road, but also took him to an inn and like paid so that all his needs would be taken care of. And I think sometimes it's hard when you lived in a very individualistic culture, because you kind of are taught that everything that you're gathering is for your ultimate goal, whatever it is, like retirement. But if you think about it, what God has given you now versus what someone doesn't have on the street makes a huge difference. And I know there's like a struggle, right? Like I think everyone relates, like, like there's that whole urge of, am I living within my means or not? But I feel like if you have a roof over your head and your basic needs are met, that you're more than equipped to help someone in need when the moment arises. I think the number one situation that I find myself being like, ooh, I don't know if I can right now, is time, like time constraint. That's something that I've been growing in, is just telling myself, like, even if this is gonna take 30 minutes to an hour out of my day, it's like totally worth it, because it's something that God emulates and wants from us.
And I think you hit it exactly right, Juan, with just this idea of being available, because the Lord will bring people in your life for you to serve and for you to walk alongside and for you to pour into, whether that's just advice, like what you were saying, Tati, but you really have to be available in order to see those opportunities. But the verse that I love in this section is 27, which I'm sure we all know and it's very popular. Just, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your strength and with all your mind, and your neighbor as yourself. It's that idea of like, when you are at rock bottom, when you are in your lowest of lows, when you've missed the mark, when you've fallen short, how really, the golden rule, how do you want to be treated in that situation? And really loving people that way, with that fervor and with that level of assistance. And what I love about what we've been talking about is it's seen we're talking about real life examples that we've encountered. I know Victoria, has encountered some too. I've worked in homelessness for a few years now, and Tati and Juan as well. What you guys just have said about your experiences, but the Bible kind of spells it out in the same way of the fact that this man was just a regular guy and he was just going from Jerusalem to Jericho, and then some guys just robbed him and stripped him and beat him and departed, leaving him half dead. So that was his situation. You know what I mean? And then he was like, okay, I have nothing. I'm broken. I'm hurt. I'm wounded. I'm on the side of the street. So you really don't know people's stories or how they got to where they're at. Really just this idea of continued assistance, like what you were saying, Tati, of just this Good Samaritan not only helped him with his wounds, but then brought him to the inn, what Juan was saying, like actually brought him, and then also like paid for his housing in that sense. So we see different elements of like helping. It's like meeting that initial like survival need of like, okay, they need help with their wounds, whether that's alcoholism, that could be mental health, that could be needing food immediately, that could be whatever that is. And then really sometimes being a warm handoff at the very least, engaging prayer, trying to create sustainable help. And I know sometimes that's not possible with every single person we encounter, but having that heart and intention and motivation, I think is so valuable and important, and really is the help. Because sometimes the Band-Aid help makes us feel good and helps them temporarily, but really doesn't offer them as much assistance as they would need.
I don't know where we heard this. I feel like I heard this earlier, but before I kind of get into it, right now we're just talking about an extreme moment, right? Like people who are like homeless or struggling with mental health, maybe they don't have anywhere to go. I feel like sometimes the help in those areas are extremely evident. But I think in our society, when we even have friends or brothers and sisters in Christ who maybe they caught a tough break, that helping them isn't necessarily culturally acceptable. I feel like as a Christian community, we should always have a heart of availability to help those in need. And something that I was kind of thinking about was, I don't know where we heard it. I don't know if it was told at our church or somewhere else, but it was kind of talking about, the difference between actually obeying Christ, like in that obedience of helping somebody, versus like saying no, like, oh no, like this time doesn't work. Every single time that, at least in my experience and how the person was saying it, was every time you actually obey that obedience and actually help someone, it always results in joy. You're so thankful that you're seeing like the fruits of what you're doing in this person's life, and it's like impactful and they're grateful. Like I've always had a positive, great experience. But on the other hand, when I've kind of been less giving of my time or resources, I've always felt regretful or always felt, oh, I could have done something. And I think that just speaks volume to like how we are created for community and for one another.
With what you're saying, Juan, I just think that's why it's so important to have like authentic community and have relationships with people where you have conversations of what the needs are in people's lives, and you're transparent with one another and forthcoming and generous with one another, even in conversation, whether that's with advice or actual assistance in different areas. I just encourage everyone listening to really formulate true community, authentic community, so that we can bear one another's burdens. Because how can we bear one another's burdens if we don't have genuine relationships where we know what's going on in each other's lives? We have no ability to either hold someone accountable, be there for them in their distress, pray for them, encourage them. Even when people are going through tough times, sometimes there's shame involved. I don't want to say anything, I didn't pass my test, or I fell short, or I'm having issues with rent. Like sometimes people don't want to share, but it's like, how else can we intervene, whether physically intervene or just through prayer? Because there's so much power in prayer. So I just encourage people, even if you're going through a tough time, hard time, a challenge, like be honest with those around you. Because sometimes the best assistance I've ever gotten is when I've been transparent with other people, and other people, God used them to meet a need in my life, whether that was emotionally, mentally, spiritually, or physically. And I would have never known what I learned from that conversation, or I would have never been pointed in the right direction if I wasn't honest.
And, all that could be its own countercultural point, but I think the core principle that I'm getting at in terms of it being practical, like an example, right? You have a friend and they're pregnant. Although it doesn't seem like they're an absolute need, there is a need, right? Like pregnancy is really difficult for someone, and, just offering to go grab groceries or cook or something like that goes a long way, for somebody in need. And I think that in our society, we kind of are taught to use all of our time, energy, and resources for ourselves. And when Jesus gives this parable, it's like so countercultural. Like, no, actually, it's not about that. It's actually to use our abundance for those who are in a tough situation.
And even if we don't have abundance, God will provide in order to work in and through us. I believe that wholeheartedly. And with that, I just like to close with just a verse from the Bible, just that we could be thinking about this next week as we move along in our series. Romans 12:2. Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing, and perfect will. And I think that really encompasses being countercultural, because it's like our mind works in a certain pattern that this world and society just leads us to, but we really need to pause and just ask God to just reveal his truth and his will and his calling over our mind and our heart, and just provide us with direction to do what is right, and in this case, being a good Samaritan.
True. I also want to say this other Bible verse. It's actually Matthew 25:31. It's actually another parable, funny enough. I think it's called the final judgment, but basically it talks about how Jesus separates two people groups. And like one of the people groups, Jesus is basically saying, oh, you like, I give you the inheritance of like heaven, right? Because you did everything, like, you clothed me, you fed me, you bathed me. They're asking like, Jesus, how did I even do that? And essentially God says, because you did, I think it says, truly, truly, I say to you, as you did to one of the least of these, my brothers, you did it to me. Which is kind of saying like the gift that we give to the less fortunate is actually giving to God in that sense. It's like a sacrificial obedience. And then there's another group where they didn't actually obey God. They didn't give to the least of these. They gave, kind of like Chris was saying, like as a checkbox. Oh, I tithed. So, there's that. But it's the heart behind the actions are missing. But it's now time for everyone's favorite moment. We're going to have just one hot take time with Tati.
Okay, mine is not related to the topic, but I thought it was a really good one. I would hope and assume, I guess I don't know if
I'm
it's
scared.
a hot take.
So if you expect us all to have the same answer,
Just do it. We'll let Vic answer first. Vic is going to answer first.
There should be no cold water, like knobs in the shower.
Okay, I'm going to say there should be, but not to take cold showers. Anyone that voluntarily takes cold showers, I think, is a little crazy.
Isn't it good for your skin and your hair?
It is good for your skin and hair, but here's what I do. I like hot showers, and then at the end, I'll do like a quick rinse in cold water. But do I sit in there for 10 minutes taking a cold shower like some people? Absolutely not.
I would say maybe warm showers and cold bath. With it, I guess, like, okay,
a cold bath?
No.
Are you talking about cold plunges?
Yeah, like your bath has the option for both hot and cold. So you could have like a warm, like.
But do you actually take a cold bath?
Sometimes, like, after you like go to the
You're
gym.
crazy.
This is news to me.
It feels good.
This is crazy.
Like, it feels good. Okay, this is the combo. This is the good combo. Are you ready? The good combo, if you're taking forever in the bathroom, is you take a warm shower, right? Just like, it's not hot, not cold, it's just right, Goldilocks edition. And then you kind of turn up the heat, and then you plug the bathtub after you're done showering. And then you just let the water hit you as it accumulates in the bathtub. Right? Has anyone done that? Yeah, right? It feels good. It's like warm and the bathtub's hot. And then you drain everything and then do cold water.
You're
and
crazy.
Then that's how you end it with. Because then, like, you get all that warm sensation and then you get all that cool sensation.
That just sounds like a lot of water.
Dude, even in Cuba where it's hot and humid, I still take warm showers.
This is definitely a first world problem. I understand.
You know what's funny? I was just having a conversation this weekend about how, so for context, everyone listening, I'm Cuban and Salvadorian. I've gone to both places, and when I've gone, cold showers are the best. And these humid tropical climates.
Okay,
like,
cold shower.
Wow,
I
feel amazing.
Listen, I wouldn't say cold. I would do like slightly warm. I wouldn't do straight up cold though.
Okay, this is what I'll say. Look, when I was in Cuba, it was so stupid humid, and everyone's like, just take a shower, it'll cool you down.
Dude, you freaking start sweating in like 2 seconds.
Bro, okay.
Get out the shower.
I was like, how is How is wetting yourself with not even controlled water, like just dousing water that's been in the shade when it's like 100 degrees outside, how's that even going to feel good? But then I just did it and I was like, wow, I'm a new man. So I do agree that like sometimes cold showers hit.
I don't know about like straight up cold. It has to be like lukewarm for me.
Okay, when you say cold, like it's like the sensation is cold, or it's like it's not really warm, but it's not cold.
No, cold is cold.
When I think of cold, I mean like straight up jumping in my pool right now that hasn't been heated. Like straight up just cold.
So what
Or
do you
like
think
the
about
ocean.
people who like cold plunge? Isn't that like super good for you?
I would never do that.
It's
It
very,
feels so
That's
good,
it
Tati.
is
torture.
It
very
feels
good
good.
for
It feels
you.
good.
I don't care if it's good. It's torture.
No, it feels good. Like, have you ever done like such a hard workout where like you're like, wow, I feel like just overheated? When you just douse yourself with cold water, you're like, wow,
Then
this
I'll
feels
do a
amazing.
lukewarm shower. I wouldn't do like a straight up cold
I see where
shower.
Tati stands in this statement.
That's why she thought we were all going to have the same answer, but we literally
Yeah.
did not.
Because it was a good hot take.
All right, guys.
I'm
Well, you know
shocked.
what it is. Let us know in the comments or let us know on our social feeds.
Do any of you guys take cold baths? That's really what I want to know from this
Juan's the
conversation.
only one. I already know. Juan is the only one.
All right, guys, you have reached the end of our podcast, but don't worry. There are more episodes to come and a lot of really good ones. So stay tuned. And hey, if there's something you want us to talk about, put it in the comments below and let us know. And maybe we'll make an episode. Who knows? But stay safe. Have a wonderful week, and we love you all. Bye.